Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jorge Ferraez, publisher of Latino Leaders Magazine. And I'm very, very happy to have today in our live panel series a very, very good friend of mine who I really admired and also follow him because of his leadership and his experience. And that is no other than Joe Bacigalupo, a man that I knew some years ago while he was working at many other different groups, advising and coaching executives, high-end, corporate leaders and business owners as well. So it is my privilege to have him here. Now, Joe Bacigalupo is President and CEO of Alliances Hub, and also a columnist of Latino Leaders Magazine. Joe, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here, Jorge. Well, I wanted to add that to the flavor that I've spent about probably 25 years in corporate America. So I do have that flavor too of going through the different ups and downs of leadership. But certainly I'm happy to be here and happy to share with you some thoughts and let's go on. Let's move on.
Great.
Thank you. Hello, Jimena. Yeah.
Great. Well, let's kick off the conversation, and I just want to establish that our editor, Jimena Vivanco, is also here and with us. She's in charge of making all the magic necessary to put the magazine together in terms of articles and topics and issues and ideas. And well, now that we're talking about this, Latino Leaders has been doing profiles and interviews with leaders almost 20 years now. Mm-hmm. And over these 20 years, we have had tremendous conversations and tremendous interviews with many different kind of leaders. And based on the experience that you have, I want to first start approaching our first topic of discussion. And many of the questions that we usually had, Joe, is the leader born or is it made? No, what is the real origin of a leader? And I think this has to do with people that feel that they are leaders and want to know more about how they can become better leaders, or maybe people that don't feel that they are leaders, but they want to become leaders. So in that sense, what have been your observations and what's your experience?
Well, I wanted to say that leaders are, they certainly have some traits. You're born with some features. So you come with some sort of a version 1.5 in your character. And you'll see that, since you're a early kid, working with some other individuals, you like to gather individuals, you like to be persuasive, and it happens. However, certainly the type of leadership that we're talking about here, it is taught. That means that you can learn it. And throughout the years, you keep adding all those experiences. And then you get to the point that you become actually an outstanding leader, inspiring people. It's just what we're looking for is someone, first of all, let's define what leadership is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Leadership is, pretty much the behaviors used in any situation, okay, where you influence the thoughts, behaviors, or feelings of one or more people. Okay, this is the definition that was given by Stephen Stein that in his book, The EQ Leader. Mm-hmm. Based on this concept, we have to understand that it seems to be that influencing is critical, and you can tell, if going back to your question, yes, I mean, you can see some kids, some children having this type of trait, but certainly, we can add more knowledge and more self-awareness so you can start developing more your leadership, yes.
So what you're trying to say is that leaders are born with some kind of wire inside already, and then you develop the different traits and the different characteristics of them.
That is correct.
And it will be interesting to know what are those main traits in a leader. Let me tell you, for example, we've been interviewing leaders for 20 mm-hmm. years. I think should have been around 13,000 interviews that we have made with leaders all over. I mean, I'm including the ones from our magazines in Mexico, our magazine here, the people that we interview for not only for the magazine, but for the website or for the maestros. And we have seen, in my impression, and of course that would be different in you,
Yep.
is that the number one trait that I have observed, that one single element that is most commonly found in leaders is determination. I have found in my stories that one of the key elements for a leader to become a leader is never quitting. So in your experience, let's talk more about those traits in leaders.
Well, that's a great point. I think perseverance and resilience is one of the key characteristics of a leader. However, I would say that falls more into dominance. It's people that are more independent, and this is actually a trait for anybody that could be independent. It doesn't make you a leader. Okay, so for us, if you ask about a leader, it should be leader is based in two different traits according to Gallup. One is, are you able to build and put together multiple teams together? And number two, are you able to make decisions? That's it. I mean, so if you look into these two elements, it really makes a paradigm shift in the concept
kind of the characteristic.
Yeah. So it makes a kind of a paradigm shift when you think, okay, well, leaders are very perseverant and resilient. Yeah, it comes along with that because, they never give up. But those are inherent traits of anybody. I mean, you can see anybody being also a salesperson. It's also they could be excellent, top salespeople that never give up. That doesn't make them a leader. So let's be specific on that.
Now, if we go to this, building teams, the ability of identifying talented people that you want in your team, or you want to, in a certain team, in a certain group of people, to perform a task or to get an objective. And the other will be making decisions in timely manner, with the right people at the right moment, at the right time, for the right things. What has been your experience with knowing or learning on how to do these things? Because is it also something natural that comes with people that can identify the talent in others, and they say, oh, I want this guy or this lady for my team? Is it something natural to say, okay, I want to make the decision right now. If we don't do it today, maybe tomorrow is going to be too late. Or it's something that you also learn?
Well, no, you do learn that because if you follow your own processes, I mean, if you look at yourself and you try to hire the people that is better for your team, you tend to mirror yourself and pick the person that are actually very close to you. So you are not getting out of your paradigm, and you tend to make the same mistakes, bringing the same type of people. They could be good or bad as long as they look like you. Sometimes we're egotistical. We try to actually bring people that resemble like us. I'm always leaning towards the fact that we need to be people analytics driven, nowadays, in order to give us the opportunity to learn more about the individual, if the individual fit the right type of role, and at the same time, if the person is going to be engaged. That's what we feel is critical. If the person fits the right role, he's going to be, or he or her is going to be engaged. And then we have, it fights against the four forces of disengagement, which is, hey, you need to have the right job fit. Okay, you need to have hopefully you have the right manager. Okay, then you can be in the right team, with the right fit. And finally, you got to be part of the organizational culture. If you are in an organizational culture that is predatory and nasty, you will not survive. It's because of your value system. Everything starts with core values and beliefs. That's the basics. And I've seen that in so many CEOs. Yes.
I remember one of the interviews that have most impacted me was a guy that came from Europe to start his own advertising agency many years ago. And actually, he was a survivor of a concentration camp. So when he arrived to the Americas, he was, young, free, very thankful of being alive. His mother passed during the tenure in the concentration camp. He went to rescue his father to a concentration camp near Spain. And then, however, he started his business, and he started very, very low. but he told me that one of the secrets of why his business and his advertising agency became one of the most important at that time in the entire country is because he did two things. One, he hired people that he thought were more intelligent than him. So he said, well, if I am more intelligent than this guy, I won't hire him. But I think that this guy is more intelligent than me, I will hire immediately. And secondly, he paid his employees more than he paid to himself at the beginning in order to keep a good staff and growing. How can we interpret that? How can we translate that into these days?
I think incentives are always good. I think excites employees. But let's go back to the first statement that he said, I'm hiring people more intelligent than me. I would say that he probably hired people that they do other things that he doesn't do. So it's actually complementing his strengths. I believe that you need to be able to find avenues to really, put people in the right places in your bus so you can all, strive towards the same goal.
Yeah.
So I think that's what he meant. He was trying to make that statement. I don't think he meant going into, people more, smarter than him. But yes, I've seen that a lot. It takes a lot of effort to really understand human behavior. I'm not an expert in that. I mean, even though every time I get in different engagements, I always get surprised sometimes with the type of behavior that I encounter,
Yeah.
Did you know that Steve Jobs had 97% approval in Glassdoor as a top CEO of a company?
No.
Well, you see, when people look at all this, the movie and you read the book, Steve Jobs was not the typical ideal, leader from the perspective of emotional intelligence, right? But in reality, even though he was tough and he was aggressive, and he still got an approval 97% in Glassdoor, higher than Mark Zuckerberg and Eric Schmidt, who's from Google. Mark Zuckerberg, as you know, is from Facebook.
Yeah. Now, Joe, let's talk about the decision making, yes. Because you already said, well, building teams, and that's why my comment on this story of this man that we interviewed, but also decisions. And I know that many times we have interviewed leaders that are, and they seem to be very impulsive. They make decisions right away, almost like an impulsive way of making a decision. I want to say maybe most of the times they are right. They made the right decision, and some others maybe don't, or they have to get back. But there's some other leaders that take time, that evaluate things. They take advice from advisors. They consult. In terms of, for example, leaders of corporations, they go to their board and they submit some topics. So what have you observed? What is that authentic, real leader of the 21st century, post-COVID era needs to do with a decision? What kind of decisions?
I think, Gallup makes a very solid statement. You need to know your limits as a CEO or as a leader. Why is that? Because we tend to, the person that makes a reactions quickly, the CEO that does that, we can say that he has intuitively defined the best patterns because of knowledge, experience. He knows this thing, and he right away, he puts on the table the decision and says, this is the way to go. But let's assume one thing. I mean, that's only with the conditions that the environment, that the market and everything is moving at the same pace that it's been moving before. So, as Wall Street says, the future returns are not a guaranteed, performance. And that's exactly what happens. So nowadays it's necessary to apply critical thinking. It's necessary to really look into analytics, any type of analytics-driven evidence in order to gain more knowledge. However, intuition is critical. Why is that? Because, at the end of the day, you're going to learn this knowledge, learn these patterns, and you're going to basically execute well. I think both leaders are okay in this case. I mean, the one that is fast-driven, quickly making decisions, and the other one, which is taking time, applying critical thinking to really come up with the right answer. However, the person that is making fast decisions, he needs to know his limits. That's the bottom line.
I remember when we interviewed a presidential candidate for Mexico.
Yeah.
His name was Vicent Fox, and he was a very interesting leader. And during his campaign, he organized one of the first presidential debates in Mexico, and his opponents were supposed to arrive one Tuesday. I remember, I think it was like 8 p.m. in the evening at some address, and all the cameras and all the media were there waiting for them and all that. But he gathered, or he invited these debate on his own. It was not organized by a third party like we usually do. So he said, well, we'll have a debate and we'll do it here. Well, in front of the media, most of the other candidates say, yes, I will be there. But at the end of the day, no one else showed up. So that evening, he stayed there. And when he appeared live in media and the other two candidates were not there, they started, calling his team and saying, hey, we never confirmed this and we were not sure. Are we still doing it? Can we do it tomorrow? Can we do it next week? Blah, blah, blah. And he said, no, today. But, maybe if we not, no, today. And that phrase, hoy, 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 in Spanish, was an impulsive thing that he had because he was very, very mad at the situation, right? Mm-hmm. So we knew later from an interview that when he finished that and he went home, mm-hmm. on the way home, he told his campaign manager, said, I messed it up. I made the biggest mistake of my career because I looked at as a stubborn man with no room for negotiation. So I messed up. I will lose the campaign. No, and surprisingly enough, that night, his confidence in the vote went up twice. From that moment on, Vicente Fox was the number one in intention for votes for the rest of the campaign forever, just because he showed from an impulsive thing that reaction.
Well, that's a great comment. I want to separate the comment that you made in two sections, because there are four typical leadership derailers, researched and proven, so many years. Number one is impulse control. What Mr. Fox did at that moment, yes, from the leadership perspective, it's a no-no, because you're supposed to resist or delay your impulse, and because sometimes the perception might not be properly received, and then we have a problem. And based on this, there's other ones like a stress tolerance, problem solving, independence, but let's focus on impulse control, which is what he's looking at that now. You said that the fact that people love that, it was probably circumstantial on the fact that potentially it might be other elements outside in Mexico at that moment that people, they were never seeing someone to be so open, so direct, like a normal human being. And suddenly, the person came out, and then in their decision-making of folks looking at Vicente Fox, they said this guy is probably going to make it happen, because he says today, and then they probably felt that we need a doer, and that's it. It was probably a decision on the individuals. But from the leadership perspective, yes, impulse control, major derailer. So we have to control that, because otherwise this could have gone south too. Mm-hmm. It could have gone south, but actually he was circumstantially lucky to make it happen,
Now I want to now drive you to the concept that I know that is one of your areas of expertise, and you praise in your everyday writing and conferences and advisories that you do. You do talk about emotional intelligence, and I think in some ways it's like an overused term.
Yeah,
and many people use it and they don't even know what it is. So what does it mean really? I remember a story in which we went to California to interview a builder, the owner of a construction company,
Mhm.
that was a huge construction company, very successful person, Latino guy. And he told us that in order to get in front of the clients and get the contracts, he had to hire a white guy and make him introduce himself as the boss of the company.
Mhm.
So people could have confidence in that white guy. And after he introduced himself as the owner of the company, he would say, "Well, now let me introduce you to Mr. Frank, and Mr. Frank will do the presentation." And then Frank started doing his presentation, and he usually got the contracts. Is that emotional intelligence, or I am misunderstanding it also?
No, what I think what he did was a marketing strategy to really get into the client. Uh, but that's a great point that you just brought up. Unfortunately, we all have what we call the emotional biases or cognitive biases, and this is just for decision making is critical. So if you go somewhere, just to give you an example, I use this a lot. I mean, if I'm talking to you, and suddenly you ask me how is Jimena performing, for the year, and I tell you before you do her performance appraisal, I think Jimena is doing about 30% performance. When you go and meet with her, I mean, you're never going to give her 90% because you're already biased that you receive a 30% from another executive of the company. And you'll be thinking, why am I not seeing that this guy is seeing that she's at 30 and I'm thinking she's at 90? So he actually got you an anchor. That's called a cognitive bias. So, and it happens every day. Okay, the same way with emotional biases. You grew up in an environment, your culture, your beliefs are different. The way you dress up, the way type of food you eat. And of course, if you're going to sell in a place that the guy doesn't speak the language, the guy doesn't, dress like you, dress up like you, or of course, it's going to be different. So that was a marketing strategy to penetrate that account, which is, dress up like the individual, use that, and on the back end, that, try to penetrate the account. Give you the same example. A good friend of mine, I don't know if you know this restaurant, Fogo de Chao.
Mm-hmm.
Fogo de Chao, well known in the U.S., grew up fast and already being sold to a corporation. My friend did the same. He's Brazilian, Jair Kozer, and certainly, he always brought people that spoke the language to sell to English-speaking folks because he couldn't manage the language. But he grew out the company, far fast that you can imagine by using that strategy. I think he had like 7 or 11 of those franchises in the best places in the United States, Vegas. So he did fantastically, and it's about how you penetrate the customer. But with this message, in regards to leadership, it's about influence, right? How do we influence the situation to get things done? Do what you need to do. And you're right. For everybody that are listening here, yes, sometimes perception is reality. You're going to go with, the way you dress, the way you talk, and they're going to perceive that. Okay. It is what it is. But then you have to find a way to really build trust. That's the name of the game. Either you build trust by putting someone over there in front of you that speaks the language, then you barge in and you talk about, some place that the guy went to, Italy or Mexico, some place like that he might be enjoying it. And then as long as you open that door of trust, then the next step is actually continue influencing. That's where leadership kicks in.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to emotional intelligence, because I'm very captivated by that term and that ability that many people have, and I'm sure is a very, very important trait in their leadership. So how can we define it? How can you find it? How do you exercise it?
Well, there's a lot of research that says as soon as you hit management, 80% of your performance as a good leader is actually emotional intelligence. So it's a fact. Now, what exactly is emotional intelligence? Then you'll see what I'm talking about in detail. Number one is, how do we see ourselves? I mean, do we believe in our own strengths and weaknesses? How do we express ourselves after you receive the information? I mean, I feel good now. Do I just impulsively say something wrong? So how do I express ourselves? Number three is, how do we build and maintain relationships with others? So that's a part after you communicate, how to connect with the other people. And the other two is the one you brought up, is decision making. How do we understand our environment, make decisions? And number 5 is, how do we deal with the stressful or difficult situations? I mean, that's what emotional intelligence is. People think that being emotional intelligence is about being nice all the time. That is incorrect. Okay. Rather, it's about the ability to use the right emotion at the right time to get the right result. Okay. It requires the ability to read the other person, know how far can you push their buttons, and knowing when to back off and when to persist. It is the power of influencing. And so it's a lot of people say, well, you need to be a nice person. Not necessarily, because in the difference between Bosniak, Bosniak, the second in command from Apple, they asked him, hey, what if you would have run that company instead of Steve Jobs? And he said, it could have been a complete failure, because I'm a patient guy, I'm a nice guy, and I like to run the business like a family. This actually was an interview with Fortune magazine. But then he said, but if I know for a fact, I wouldn't have been able to really push this to the levels that Steve Jobs had. But the difference between him and Steve Jobs was, even though Steve Jobs didn't have that patience, didn't have that capacity of emotional intelligence on the area of interpersonal relationships, the guy was brilliant doing inspirations. So he was a fantastic inspirational leader. And inspiration falls under influence. So therefore, leadership, it really falls a lot into the area of influence. And Steve Jobs will always be remembered, as Fortune magazine put him at that time, when they interviewed as the top CEO, best CEO in the world, I think in the United States. I don't know. I don't remember the title, but it was one of the top CEOs in America. Oh, in America. I remember that. So that's what it was. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that, and don't use the term lightly, because it's deeper than that.
So, for example, if when you see all these politicians and they arrive into a scene in which there's some discomfort among the people because something happens, and this politician needs to immediately understand the environment, and they transform like a chameleon, and they start expressing also certain sadness, and they immediately identify and relate themselves to the suffering of these people, and they start giving these speeches and these messages saying, I understand you very well, my dad also suffered of a similar situation, and we are family, blah blah blah. That is create an emotional intelligence.
That's correct. That's called empathy. I think that's one of the scales of emotional intelligence. Yes, empathy. Now, go ahead.
Well, my question is, okay, that is something that I'm sure many of the people that are watching can imagine that they can do, or you can try to be empathic with that employee from Pizza Hut that is giving you the pizza, and it's 100 degrees outside, and the pizza is a little bit, and you say, well, I understand you. I mean, you are suffering. I mean, you are being compassionate. You're being okay. But I understand also the leaders need to be authentic, and to some degree, exercising emotional intelligence and trying to create emotions that maybe I'm not feeling really. Is that being authentic, or how can you balance those things, those two emotions, or those two poles?
I would say that in order for you to be authentic, you need to know who you are first. You need to know your strengths and your weaknesses. Then when you know that, you can be a chameleon and try to adapt, with the feelings of others. I mean, certainly you don't want to be completely empathic and compassionate, because that's what happens to people in sales as well. When you're too empathic and compassionate, you never close. You keep talking about family and social life and never close. So, and probably a lot of people in the audience are empathize with me on that, or sympathize. Well, the thing is, you need to be able to be assertive. Assertive means that you need to be able to push those buttons, make things happen, but do not cross the line of hurting feelings. That's a very difficult thing to do. However, it can be learned. So assertiveness is what we're looking for, which involves being empathic, but everything in a balance mode. So did I answer your question?
Yeah. No, I think it's right. I mean, there needs to be some level of authenticity for people to react with trust to what you are saying or what you are trying to act in front of them, and guide them and give that guidance that a leader brings to the followers, right? Now, on styles of leadership, I know that you are also strong at that point. There's many ways and many different cocktails or recipes that we can use or you can use to become a leader. And I might be wrong, but from my experience, there's no such as a perfect leader. There's like maybe 10, 20 characteristics, and you have these 20 little LEDs light up, and certain leaders have 15, and other leaders have 18, and others have 12. But at the end of the day, it's like a collection of different elements. And I have interviewed people that are very drastic, very innovative, very disruptive, and their leadership immediately is recognized by that. And you've been talking about Steve Jobs, and maybe we can say, well, Steve Jobs was a disrupting leader. He exercises leadership in changing the rules or fighting against the establishment and what was established and all that. But there's also those leaders that, like maybe Wozniak is, that need to come right after a disruptive leader, and need to bring stability back, and need to bring the growth back. And then organizations need to have like this alternative or pendulum leadership. Is that a right assumption?
It is a perfect assumption. As a matter of fact, corporate strategy changes all the time, okay? Because you need to make changes all the time. Now, you need to go back and make sure you have the right team in place. I mean, most of the people that might be sitting with you, they might be stabilizers, people that they only like to get things done. And suddenly now you have a team of 500 people that need to be, pampered and make sure they're engaged, and they want to know more about you. And you're still in that mode of, sales and try to close things down and very procedural. So they probably want you to be more cultivating than actually stabilizing. And then suddenly, or suddenly the strategy changes to, probably exploring to really find, new products, new services. And you still have people that are in the cultivating mode, which is, trying to make sure all the folks are good. So the types of traits are a little different from each individual. So I would say that you need to find the specific traits for the leaders that you need to execute those strategies. Now, talking about leadership, yes. I mean, according to the way that we have pretty much aligned emotional intelligence is with transformational leadership, where you get the possibility of being authentic, where you actually know exactly, you serve as a role model for moral and fair behavior. Okay, that's pretty much what, or a transparent approach that commands esteem and confidence from employees. Or, we believe the insight is important also for a leader, that provide insight, because, by sharing purpose and a hopeful vision for the colleagues to follow. Okay. And then you talk about coaching. I mean, now it's critical. I mean, before it used to be more like a command management, direct command to employees. Today, a leader who coaches effectively is seen as a mentor who supports employee growth. Okay, employees are nurtured towards achieving their highest levels of performance. And finally, is, as you said, innovation, right? That's the part that you're talking about that's critical. So we map those transformational leadership traits to emotional intelligence. In innovation, you have a leader that focuses on taking risks, spurring the colleagues' ingenuity and autonomous behavior, in thought to, the knowledge is valued and challenges are viewed as learning opportunities. So from that perspective, those four elements are the four pillars of successful leadership that come from emotional intelligence. And that's what, that term emotional intelligence is being moved to transformational leadership. And I just wanted to give you the correlation, yes.
So can we repeat the four pillars?
Yes.
The first one is?
Authenticity. Number two is coaching. Number three is insight. And number four is innovation. And they all come from emotional intelligence. So each of them have traits. Okay. And of course, we look at those four And then we look at the 4 derailers that I said before: impulse
Yeah.
control, stress tolerance, and we take a look at which, when we do the corresponding assessments, we see where you actually fit into the mold, and we help you through, executive coaching, move forward to the next levels.
Now, Joe, how can we discover in ourselves if we are a leader or not? And let me tell you, some of the best stories of leaders that I have known or interviewed are people that inherited a leadership. And despite the fact that they were prepared or not, they needed to exercise a leadership. We have some examples. We just interviewed a fantastic lady who inherited a company from her father, who died suddenly. And she had to just take over the company, take over the board of directors, and keep going. We have interviewed some people on the other side of the scale, like, for example, people that inherit a property or even a title, like a prince or like a king or someone like that, that sometimes they are appointed to be the new leader, and now they need to find the strength inside and the skills. So how can I discover if I have the basic DNA to become a leader, and what are like the first steps that I need to start to take in order to start educating myself and have all these characteristics?
I mean, those are great examples. And typically when people fall into these scenarios, they suffer of what we call the imposter syndrome, because they're in a position that they never done before. They're probably equipped, or some of them might not be equipped with some knowledge, college, some experiences, but they're not at that level yet. So therefore, they're going to have to psychologically adapt to really be driving these new enterprises. However, looking into the traits that you need, how do you discover you're a leader? I would say people will actually, the fact that some people will follow you, you will be able to influence properly and to build teams, that should give you an indication that you are onto something, into leadership. However, there is a lot of tools in the marketplace. I always say that I like to look into core values and beliefs. And you have, for example, the VIA survey, which is the survey of character strengths, because they're basically very value-based. And I know you have taken it. So it really gives you the opportunity to see what are the character strengths that are important to you and how you naturally behave in a daily basis. And based on that, you can say, well, my leadership is not number one. So obviously I don't pay attention too much into leadership, and you work on that. However, you can also look into, if you're already a seasoned leader, even though you haven't taken the character strengths, that means that you were created by experience, then it would be important to take a look at a 360 snapshot to see what do the employees believe and think about you, to see if there is a gap between your perception and their perception. So, and then we go from there. If the perception is actually, pretty much a match to what you have, outstanding. Then you can say you're doing a good job in communicating, as we said, authenticity, insight, communicate your insight, which is mission, your purpose, in the specific corporate strategy changes that you're supposed to make.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to spend the next 5-7 minutes in talking about something that is a topic that is usually not treated in interviews and discussions about leadership, because I have understood over all these years that leadership is not the destination. It's like being rich, right? What do you want to be rich for, right? It's not I just want to be rich, or I just want to be talented. But why? What are you going to do with that? So I think sometimes people see leadership or being a leader as an ultimate destination. But I think that is not true. That is like a mirage. The more you want it, the less you have it, right? And sometimes you need to ask yourself, okay, what do I want the leadership for? Why do I want to develop my leadership skills? and be an effective leader for? What is the ultimate mission? What is the ultimate objective? What is my ultimate dream? How do you see that?
That's a great point. My concept is you need to understand your purpose. Number one is purpose. That's actually what drives you to do anything in life. And the purpose is actually based on your value system. Okay. So when you go into your purpose and apply yourself into specific goals, and your goals are aligned to your purpose, then, you move forward towards, wherever you want to be. In this case, leadership is not the ultimate destination, as you said. Leadership will come along because during the process of reaching a goal, you either have to make great decisions or you have to, put together multiple teams to make it happen. So then when you do those two things, then you are a leader. You're in business.
Mm-hmm. So it is something that you acquire or you are denominated as a byproduct of pursuing a purpose or pursuing something else that goes beyond just being something or having something, right?
And that's a great example. When I was young, when I graduated from college, I remember I wanted to be a leader. I wanted to be a leader so bad. And I started to take all the certifications to become a leader. I went to, every time there was something at the company, I would just sign up for leadership. But the question would be, do I have a clue about what leadership at that moment? Because I was just young, fresh. I had no idea, but I wanted to be called a leader. It was like my goal. Then I realized it was not worth it at all. I realized that purpose was more important. It took me to different directions. However, at the end of my lifetime career, you end up as, doing things in leadership, which I never intended to do. Here I am doing things that in the beginning I wanted to, but then after that, I had to turn a different direction to make other things happen in my life.
Yeah, and being a leader is a full-time job. It's something that many people imagine as, oh my God, I'm already a leader. What fortunate I am now. I can rest in my fame or my prestige, and then just lay down and enjoy. And it's totally the opposite of that. It's you're the more leader you become, the more responsibilities that you have, the more people are following you, the more role modeling you need to do, the more examples you need to bring and do and act and be consistent. And sometimes it's a hurdle. It's a hurdle to be a leader. And so Jimena, I just want to see if we have any question from your side that we can incorporate to the chat here.
Yes, definitely. So Joe, someone's asking if you could quickly just repeat the 5 different emotional intelligence main scales.
Well, I define the definition as number one is how to see ourselves. That's a self-perception, and then how do we express ourselves? That's a self-expression. Then we have how do we build and maintain relationship with others? That's the interpersonal, skill. And then we have how do we understand our environment and make decisions? That is a decision-making skill. And then the last one is how do we deal with a stressful, difficult situation, which is a stress management skill. We didn't talk about stress management, Jorge, which for me is one of the top and most critical things for leaders. I mean, it's
especially these times, right? When people are confused with paradigms are changing. What can we say about that, Joe? What's your diagnostics of what's going on?
This is a very difficult situation. I mean, people are overreacting. Impulse control is out of the question. People are killing each other just because of you're not wearing a mask, for God's sake. I mean, it's just you're getting to that level of sensitivity, and we have to be. We have to acknowledge that we have to take a look at ourselves and try to calm ourselves down by some sort of mechanism, either working out or doing some sort of meditation or yoga, whatever, in order for us to be able to have that shield against stress. I use a lot of this with all my CEOs and executives. I think how you breathe is important. And you're going to tell me now you're going to become holistic. Yes, I am. I have to be holistic with all the CEOs and everybody that works with me because we are humans. That's the bottom line. And yeah, stress management is, I would say, very critical today. A lot of people with depression, a lot of people with issues. And of course, then CEOs trying to manage, well, I'm going to bring this up right away because I think it's important. I don't know if you guys read 2 days ago of this gentleman, Michael Lofthouse, CEO of Solid 8. He went on a ranting viral towards an Asian family. Think about it. A CEO having a dinner in a restaurant, and he went nuts. For what reason, we don't know. Bottom line is he resigned his position 2 days ago as a CEO. He's not associated whatsoever with the company. You know, was this worth it for the guy? And then he had to say to the public, I apologize. I'm going to be enrolling myself into anti-discriminatory, whatever, workshop training, and go for the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, and work on my alcoholism. Do you think that's logical? I mean, for a CEO, that's impulse control. That's a perfect example of impulse control.
Yeah.
He probably had a preconceived notions of, he probably was upset, frustrated, and he couldn't manage it. He couldn't do a good job.
But now, to that point that I think is really, really interesting, we need to also talk about the conception that leadership is sometimes associated with success, which is not the same thing, right? No. Leadership is kind of a characteristic, it's a value, and then success is just a moment, a result of something that ended up, with a result that was expected. So many people say that real success is a succession of many failures, right? And of course, you just mentioned something very true. We are all humans, and this is leadership is a human characteristic. And so what happens to that leader that made mistakes, that had to lose his job because of a bad decision, because of a impulse, bad control, or not enough earnings and not a well performance? You need to reinvent yourself. I mean, you don't lose being a leader. I mean, how can you recover? What is that process?
Well, that's the beauty of our human condition. I think knowing that he made a mistake and going towards the path of recovery, is certainly, we tend to be compassionate. Even though people say we're not compassionate, we're humans. Somehow we will understand that after, we need time to digest. That's what in the news they tell you, that you as a journalist, they tell you just time will allow people to forget. And yes, time will allow people to forget, and then he can come back and have those scars as probably knowledge and experience that can share with everybody, saying don't fall into this, and he might come back stronger. So I do believe there is a possibility of making things better in the future.
Jimena, do we have more questions?
Yes. So, Joe, someone's mentioning adaptability as another key characteristic of a successful leader. So he is asking are you familiar with situational leadership? And if so, can you share your thoughts about it?
Yeah, situational leadership, I believe, was done, is what we've been taught in the MBA back in the years with Ken Blanchard, I feel. Situational leadership is amazing. I think it's a great topic. You were saying that the other part of the question was, I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of the question?
Yeah. What are your thoughts about situational leadership?
Well, I think it just, no, but you had another part of the element in the beginning of the question.
So he was just mentioning how adaptability is another key characteristic.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to hear. Well, adaptability, it is crucial. It's part of emotional intelligence. Of course, how to adapt yourself to different situations. It's a flexibility in stress management. So it is incorporated into the model that I described before. It's, how do you understand your environment and make decisions? You have to adapt to yourself to make decisions. And how do you deal with stressful situations? That's adaptability. That was the old model that we had years ago that it was, I think, developed in 1997, but by Salovey Caruso, Salovey, and Ruben Baron. Those are the guys that developed this assessments. But then, they came back with, and they move adaptability into these two areas that are more touchable and more understandable, which is stress management and decision making.
Right.
Going back to emotional intelligence, what are some ways to detect the levels of emotional intelligence of a future boss or teammate?
Okay, there are assessments in the marketplace, such as the EQI 2.0. That's a Ruben Baron expanded version that was developed by also a Canadian company called MHS, and is one of the top assessments in the marketplace that they do understand and they do work on these 5 different areas. So it's an assessment that they can purchase directly, or certainly we'll be happy to help as well. But they can be done on individually or in a 360 matters, so you understand your gap. You try to work through the different elements to narrow the gap, and probably executive coaching might be required to help you move forward. But in reality, there are several different assessments in the marketplace. One of the top ones is EQI 2.0, from MHS, Multi-Health Systems. I think that's what it says. That's the name it is. Yeah.
Now, Joe, from the perspective of Alliances Hub, what is the job that you do with the executives that you advise? What is the typical situation in which you enter, go to action, and how do you work it, and how do you leave the person?
Well, first of all, Alliances Hub, it's a global executive advisory firm. We offer change management and strategy consulting, and talent optimization and analytics, leadership development, and executive leadership coaching services. Our mission is to help B2B organizations maximize human potential for optimal business results and productivity. How do we work with this? We have different scenarios. For leadership effectiveness, we basically go and do an evaluation of emotional intelligence to see if the leader wants to work on behavior. We also do leading in crisis, which is we go and we try to see when there is changes in corporate strategy, if there is alignment at the executive level, and when the executive level needs to be moved to the right seats, coaching might be required to put the right individuals in the seats and work throughout the specific process. Typically, these engagements are not short. They're at least 6 months, and sometimes it can take all the way down to 12 months. But changing behavior is not easy. It takes time. This is about probably change management. We do have workshops, specifically the emotionally effective leader, where what we do is in one full day, we bring in, to the organization where they want to learn about this. We teach emotional intelligence, and we bring this survey called EQI 2.0, with the leadership report for each of them, where they can see these 4 pillars: authenticity, insight, coaching, and innovation, mapped out for all these executives. And at the end, they come out with a plan of action for execution, either on their own or via an executive coaching services. Okay, so we have several other services, but pretty much in a nutshell, we work on specific projects, even in self-leadership as well. If companies want to improve self-leadership, we do have the sales force effectiveness. We look at individuals, we look at the sales executives, as well as management, to see how do they operate and how do they execute their potential sales process. And we work always on behavior, making sure they can execute properly and get things done. Mm-hmm. In a nutshell, that's what we do. So we have workshops all the time going around and helping B2B organizations with emotional intelligence type of learning.
What is the usual challenges that you encounter through your work, or when you are guiding or advising companies or executives?
Well, it is always is a status quo, right? Is that they're not willing, they're very rigid to change. And sometimes because of mergers, acquisitions, or some different type of changes in the company, we have to adapt. And one of the major issues that I've noticed is communication. Leaders are not good at communicating, down the echelons of the organization, and they do have issues keeping everybody informed and keeping the motivation that these changes are the best for the company. So it's that's what I've noticed the most is the status quo of employees, but
Mhm.
mostly it's because of communication issues from management.
Well, I think it has been a very interesting discussion about leadership. Of course, we're leaving a lot of things on the table for a potential second episode here. But I think the most important thing to understand is that we are in a phase of a huge change of paradigm. No, I think that what the changes that people expected at the end of the 20th century, that year 2000, in which we were going to be awake the 1st of January, and everybody, we're going to say we're in the 21st century already, and everything has changed. I think we are seeing these changes a little bit late, maybe 20 years ago, but we are seeing not only the current situation with the pandemic, but also, you know, changing generations, the characteristics of the millennials. That is a generation that is still to be understood fully, and then we have the pushing the new generation after the millennials also starting to get into the workforce. Then the exit of the baby boomers, and how all this is changing leadership patterns and shifting a lot of things in the world. So I think that there hasn't been any other moment in history that I think like this one, that is so interesting to observe leadership and to participate in leadership.
I think we have to keep in mind that Capgemini, the Research Institute, came up with a report suggesting that emotional intelligence skills are going to be needed. You know, they're going to increase by a value of 6 times in the next 3 to 5 years. So don't be surprised if they're going to come outside and they're going to basically request that in the job description. They want to make sure you are, EI equipped to really manage something in the future. Remote teams now, they're also, it's so critical to have engagement, emotional intelligence. So we're going through very difficult times, but at the same time, we are going to be in the new normal. So it requires more from leadership. And you said baby boomers are on the way out. Then we have the millennials coming in, which is a different flavor. They're more heart oriented. So that even requires more leadership. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what's going to happen in the next few years.
Yeah. All right. And then I invite you to do maybe another of these chats soon, because there's many other topics in the table, like, for example, all the things that had to do with leaders providing hope and optimism in times like these, right? Which is so crucial to build trust, to build hope, to build optimism towards the future for corporations, countries, economies, even families. So let's stay tuned. But for now, Joe, I just want to say thank you for sharing with us your knowledge. I know you have many hours of flight in this topic. It shows you're a very well versed person on these topics, and really I appreciate the support that you're giving us in Latino Leaders, and also sharing these comments. So thank you very much again. Thank you, Jimena Vivanco, for your coordination of this panel. Thank you, Paola Aleman, our event coordinator. Do you want to add something, or would you say bye until the next one?
No, it was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much to all. And yes, let's see if we can have a second one so we can have a more interactive conversation with a lot of people and get some of the answers that we couldn't address today. This is a very, very interesting topic, and certainly we'll be happy to answer all those questions. Thank you, Jimena, for your time too, and thank you, Jorge, again for inviting me.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. Bye-bye. Bye-bye to you all.
Bye.
Bye.